Hey everyone, welcome back. It is time to start getting serious about the front nose section here. So initially when I drilled this out, I did it with the 3.5 millimeter Clecos or whatever the copper sizes are. And if you look at the instructions, it does say to take them up to 4 millimeters. So I figured, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm just going to get everything prepped, ready to go. I drilled up to the 4 millimeter size on each of the holes, and then also countersunk the skin there, or the fiberglass, so it will receive the rivet itself. The idea is that you get the rivet just slightly below the fiberglass level, so you can take some body fill to go back over and make it all smooth and cover up the rivet itself. So for each hole that I did, I just had a spare rivet sitting handy, and drill it out, recess it, and then I would grab the rivet and make sure that it set down far enough. That way I could make sure that I was actually getting it recessed far enough on the first shot, and I didn't really have to mess too much with taking the Clecos back out after I got the holes set. So it's just a matter of spending some time going through and doing each one of those, and I don't know. I mean, it's just another part of the process. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. Everything seems to be going well at this point in time. It just takes a little bit of time to do this process. And I wanted to make sure that it was all squared away, because it's like everything else. Once you put it together, especially when you're using an adhesive, it's definitely together. And for those of you who haven't seen the other ones, the pig strips are basically just left over, or the stickies are left over from when I was using that for measurement on a per hole or per Cleco location. So I wanted to make sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be. The only thing that I had question on was I wasn't sure if the Clecos that go up along the firewall itself, or not the firewall, but the instrument panel backer, if those actually got oversized as well, and I did double check, and those get oversized as well. But I did stop just to double check on that. The other thing that's really interesting is if you have the cable parachute section for the canopy, there's one hole where there's just no way to get a rivet in that hole, because the rivet won't recess down in far enough, because the cable actually interferes with the location. I really don't want to drill in that far. So anyway, so this is the problem I've been trying to fix, is how to get that vent that it's further forward in the plane than what the duct actually is, and that's what I'm working on here. I came up with basically a little S turn. I went to Lowe's and I got some plumbing material, and that's what I came up with to be able to reroute that section so that the defrost hose can naturally sit where it wants to within that section, rather than trying to pinch it all together. And I think it's going to work out well. It does make it, there's a little bit of weight there, but it attached really, really well. It just naturally goes into that location. I moved it around a few times to just kind of give it properly aligned, because what I wanted to do next year was actually start using the Sikia and getting things riveted together. Because earlier on in the video I was getting the holes made, pulled the Clecos out. Clecos are all out. This is literally the last time I want to put the Clecos in. So following the instructions from Evan, just a very liberal amount of the Sikia there at the forward portion of the nose covering there, or the cowling cover. It's not the cowling cover, but it's the section that goes over the instrument panel. So, and I use the same method with 2x4s as you do with the actual canopy itself, so that it's setting pretty close in place, and it makes it easy just to drop in place rather than to try to finagle it and go along that route. And at this point in time, I'm just basically looking for all the again, I typically do every other hole with the Clecos, and then go back through, rivet the open holes, and then reverse the process, take the Clecos out and put the rivets in the empty holes. I definitely was not short of using lots of Sikaflex liberally. Basically, when I got done with this, I had a lot of squeeze out. I went through and I cleaned up as much as I could just here with the putty knife. I definitely wanted to make sure that I got whatever squeeze out was cleaned up before it dried too much, because it's easier to clean up when it's wet. But I also didn't want the Sikaflex to go to waste, and I know that I needed to run the seam around the canopy as well, and that was on my list. It just wasn't on my list at this time. But since I had some there and there was some time to work with it, I very quickly got out the guide tape that I had and taped up the canopy itself. And once I got that done, then went through and did the Sikaflex into the hole that was left behind by the guide itself. That came out okay. I probably need to do a little bit of touch up on it, but I was able to actually reuse or to repurpose all of the Sikaflex that I pulled off from the rest of the plane itself. So it didn't go to waste, and I was quite happy about that. It did take a little bit of time to get it applied. I just had to be careful, and it's just messy. It's sort of like doing the fuel tanks, where you get a tiny little bit of the Pro Seal on you, and it doesn't matter what you do, it will get on everything in the meantime. So you have to be very careful with that. I really should have put gloves on, just because it was. You can take the tape off as carefully as you want, but it gets on you. So anyway, I got all that done. I went through and I went ahead and riveted the non Sikaflex version or portion of that cowling cover on, or not the well, whatever that is. So anyway, that's all done. Next thing to do was to start working on the prop, because the whole objective here is to get that the instrument panel cover on, so that I could start working on the cowling itself. I had a buddy of mine coming over, and I had a deadline to get that done by. I honestly, this part to me was also super scary, because it's an expensive piece and you really don't want to screw it up. But it actually was like a whole ton easier than I expected it to be. I think the hardest part really was just getting things lined up so that it went together correctly. It wasn't a huge deal. And then once that's done, getting that the part that the prop attaches to cleaned up, and using I'd never seen the brass guide or slip stuff. Never seen that. So anyway, just went through and I got all those done up. Each one I put a fair amount of that on there. My buddy Jeff was down again, so got all these put on. This section here you don't torque. This is just basically you're using those expansion joints or spacers to recess or seat the rings themselves into place, and they went on really 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 easy. I was very happy with how that went together. And it was, probably took me maybe 20-30 minutes to do that part. You just don't, there's no need or reason to tighten these down super tight, because you're basically taking the sleeve and you're getting it into that section there. It'd be hard to screw this up. Anyway, here's the prop going on, or the prop, the mount going on. This went on pretty easily. And once you get that on, get some of the threads from the bolts into the unit itself. And once you get the bolts started, then it'll go on just fine. After that, then next thing to do is, I just grabbed a wrench and snugged them up a little bit, because with anything with the torque wrench, it's like you want it to be really close, because if it's a long ways off, especially if you've got to use the crow's foot, which is what you have to use really for this, you don't want to have to move it too far, because otherwise it's a lot of extra back and forth. And with the crow's foot, it works just fine. So it's just a matter of going through and getting the rest of those torqued down. But I had to get this all done because this was Friday, and my friend Don was coming over on Saturday to help get the cowling portion going. And you have to have this section done in order to get the cowling going. Anyway, so obviously the next one will be on how the cowling, at least the initial phase of it, goes together. And, stay tuned for that. Thanks.